The cafeteria went silent. Trays clattered, whispers stopped, and every eye locked on the scene unfolding in the middle of the room. For a week straight, the new girl had been the target, mocked, laughed at, and cornered by the loudest bully in school. Everyone expected her to shrink back again, to endure it quietly. But this time she didn't. With one swift move, the girl everyone thought was too anxious grabbed the bully by the arm and flipped him over her shoulder. The silence was broken by a collective gasp. No one saw it coming. The first day of school should have been exciting. For most kids, it was a chance to see friends after summer, swap stories, and show off new backpacks. But for her, it was different. She walked through the front doors with her shoulders hunched, clutching her books like a shield. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, loud in her own ears, though no one else noticed. She hoped, prayed, that she could slip into the background and just get through the day without anyone staring at her too long. But middle schools aren't kind to kids who look like they don't belong. And she stood out, not because she wanted to, but because her nervousness showed in every move. The way her eyes darted around the hallway, the way she hesitated before speaking when called on in class, the way she seemed to shrink when groups of kids laughed nearby. By lunchtime, the wolves had already picked up on the scent. They weren't actual wolves, of course, just a pack of kids who had crowned themselves kings and queens of the cafeteria. At the center of it all was him, the loudest, boldest voice in the room. The kind of kid who walked with swagger, his laughter echoing louder than everyone else's, his insults sharp enough to make even his friends laugh nervously. He noticed her immediately. "Hey, new girl," he called across the cafeteria, loud enough for heads to turn. "Why you looking so scared? Did somebody tell you this place eats people alive?" A ripple of laughter followed. She lowered her head, staring into her tray, wishing desperately to vanish. But it didn't stop. Day after day, the teasing grew sharper. In class, they mimicked her shaky voice when she answered a question. In the hallway, they'd block her path just to see her freeze up. By Friday, her stomach twisted every morning before school, and her notebooks were filled with scribbles of anxious doodles instead of class notes. She told herself she could survive it. She always had. This wasn't the first school where she'd been the quiet outsider. But something about the way the cafeteria leader, the loudest bully, kept targeting her made it feel unbearable this time. His smirk, his confidence, the way everyone laughed with him, it was a show he put on, and she was his favorite prop. What no one knew, not even she realized fully yet, was that the show was about to take a dramatic turn. By midweek, the new girl's worst fears had come true. She wasn't invisible. She was a target. It started small, mocking whispers as she walked past rows of desks, pencils tapping in rhythm as if to highlight her hesitations when she read aloud in class. But like all bullies, once they sensed weakness, they pushed harder. On Wednesday morning, she entered the classroom to find a sticky note stuck to her chair. In blocky handwriting, it read, "Nervous Nancy." Laughter exploded the moment she saw it. She froze, cheeks burning red, while the teacher tried half-heartedly to restore order. But the damage was already done. That nickname stuck like glue. Hallways became gauntlets. Books were accidentally knocked out of her hands. Shoulder bumps came harder than necessary. She learned to keep her eyes down, arms wrapped around her books like armor. Every step felt like walking through a storm of whispers, giggles, and pointed fingers. But the worst moments always came at lunch. The cafeteria was the bully stage, and he loved nothing more than performing for his audience. On Thursday, he spotted her trying to slip into an empty corner table. He slammed his tray down across from her, loud enough to make soda slosh over the edge of his cup. "Hey, Nervous Nancy," he said, voice booming. "Do you even eat? Or are you too scared her food might laugh at you too?" His friends roared, slapping the table like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Her hands trembled as she picked at her sandwich. She didn't respond. Silence was her only defense. But silence, in a place like that, was fuel for the fire. The bully leaned closer, voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Ah, don't cry, new girl. You'll flood the cafeteria." He mimed paddling a boat with his spoon, and once again, the crowd erupted. Every day, every lunch, it was the same script. The laughter, the humiliation, the weight pressing down on her chest until it was hard to breathe. And every time, she told herself, just survive. Just survive one more day. But that Friday, something shifted. She sat there, hunched and trembling like always, but inside, something cracked. The more he jeered, the more she clenched her fists onto the table. She thought about all the times she'd swallowed her fear, all the moments she'd pretended not to hear, all the times she'd walked away shaking. Her heart was pounding, but not just from fear anymore. This time, there was something else mixed in, something she hadn't felt in a long time. It was anger, and though no one noticed it yet, though the cafeteria roared with laughter as usual, that tiny spark was about to change everything. Friday afternoon. The cafeteria buzzed with its usual noise, clattering trays, bursts of laughter, the scrape of chairs against the floor. For most kids, it was just another end to another week. For her, it felt like walking into a battlefield she never signed up for. She chose her seat carefully, the farthest corner, as if the extra distance could shield her. But distance meant nothing when the bully had already decided she was his favorite target. He saw her instantly. Like a predator catching sight of prey, his grin widened, and he swaggered over, his posse following like shadows. They carried their trays like props, ready for the next performance. Well, Nervous Nancy, he announced, his voice booming across the cafeteria. Still hiding in the corner? Don't worry, guys, she's harmless. Afraid of her own shadow. Snickers rippled through the room. She gripped her sandwich tighter. Her stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from the fire building inside. She'd spent the whole week shrinking, retreating, hoping he'd eventually grow bored. But the truth had become painfully clear. He wasn't going to stop. Not unless something, or someone, made him. He leaned closer, his smirk daring her to say something. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you too scared to even talk back? Her hand shook. But this time it wasn't the same trembling as before. This was different. This was adrenaline. Memories flickered through her mind. The long summer afternoons at her uncle's dojo, the hours spent practicing throws and stances, the discipline drilled into her until it became second nature. She hadn't wanted to stand out here. She hadn't wanted anyone to know. But the lessons came back in a rush now. And for the first time all week, she stopped feeling powerless. She looked up at him, really looked, and in that moment, something inside her hardened. Enough, she whispered. He blinked, taken aback. What was that? Her voice was steadier this time. I said enough. The table quieted. His friends exchanged glances, uncertain. For the first time, the script wasn't going according to plan. He sneered, trying to recover his grip on the crowd. Oh, look, she found her voice. What are you going to do, Nervous Nancy? Cry louder? Shake harder. The laughter that followed was forced, weaker than before. People leaned in, sensing something was different. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. And that silence, the silence of her not breaking, was louder than anything she'd done all week. The bully didn't know it yet, but his reign as king of the cafeteria was about to end. Because the new girl he'd mocked and humiliated all week had finally reached her breaking point. And when she broke, she wasn't going to crumble. She was going to fight back. Monday, a new week, but the same cafeteria, the same crowd, and the same bully waiting to put on his daily show. Only this time, something was different, though no one but her could feel it. She walked in with her tray, heart hammering but steps steady. Every whisper, every glance, every laugh seemed sharper today, but she didn't let it crush her. She was done shrinking. She had already decided. The bully spotted her immediately. His grin spread wide, as though Friday's moment of defiance had been nothing more than a fluke. He slammed his tray onto the table with exaggerated force, the sound echoing like a drum roll. His friends gathered around, hungry for entertainment. Well, he bellowed. Look who's back for another round. Nervous Nancy, ready to give us some Monday laughs. Snickers rippled through the cafeteria. A crowd began to form, kids sliding into nearby seats or standing just close enough to watch. Everyone knew the routine by now. She was the opening act, the joke that fueled their lunch breaks. But today, she didn't duck her head. She didn't stare at her food. She lifted her gaze and met his eyes. That tiny act of defiance threw him off more than she realized. His smirk faltered for just a second before he puffed out his chest, louder than ever. "Oh, look at that. She's actually staring back. Careful, guys. She might faint from all the courage it's taken." Forced laughter followed, but it wasn't as strong as usual. Some kids leaned forward, curious. They remembered Friday. Something about her was different now. He circled the table like a lion sizing up prey. "Tell you what," he said, leaning closer so his voice dripped with mock challenge. "If you can even say something without stuttering, maybe we'll let you sit here without laughing for one whole day." "Deal." A hush spread. The cafeteria waited. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, steady. Her breathing slowed, controlled. She could hear her uncle's voice in her mind. "Balance comes first. Stay grounded. Don't react to their noise. React to their moves." The bully leaned closer still, so close she could smell the ketchup on his breath. He poked her shoulder with one finger. "Small? Nerveux nancy. Say something. Or are you going to freeze up like always?" She exhaled slowly. For the first time all week, she didn't feel small. She felt ready. The crowd sensed it too. The cafeteria's usual roar had shifted into something else. Anticipation. What they didn't know was that this wasn't going to be the same script. Today, the show was about to flip. Literally. The cafeteria had gone strangely quiet. Hundreds of eyes followed the scene at the corner table. The bully leaned closer, still smirking, his finger jabbing at her shoulder like a taunt, daring her to break. But she didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. She stood. The scraping of her chair against the floor was enough to send a ripple of surprise through the crowd. She wasn't trembling this time. She wasn't hunched over or hiding behind her tray. She stood tall, eyes locked on his. The bully chuckled, though his voice carried a crack of uncertainty. "Oh, nervous Nancy's standing up. What are you going to do? Tell the teacher? Run away?" A few laughs followed, but weaker this time. The crowd leaned in, sensing something big was about to happen. He reached out again, poking at her arm, pushing for the reaction he always got. But this time, her hand shot up, grabbing his wrist with lightning speed. Gasps echoed around the cafeteria. "What the?" he stammered, caught off guard. And then, before anyone could process it, she moved. Her feet planted firmly, her body pivoted, and with a clean, practiced motion, she flipped him. 1 second, the cafeteria king was smirking down at her. The next, his back slammed against the linoleum floor with a thud that silenced the room. Trays clattered. Forks froze midair. Jaws dropped. For a heartbeat, no one made a sound. The only noise was his stunned groan as he lay flat on the floor, blinking up at the ceiling in disbelief. She stepped back, calm, breathing steady. Her posture wasn't cocky. It wasn't showy. It was controlled, disciplined the way she'd been taught. The crowd erupted. "Oh my God, did you see that? She flipped him. She actually flipped him. No way. She's like some kind of ninja or something." The bully scrambled to sit up, his face burning red, eyes wide with a mixture of shock and humiliation. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, the cafeteria's loudest voice had been completely silenced. His friends didn't rush to help him. They just stared, caught between loyalty and the fear that they might be next if they laughed too loudly. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder than anything she could have shouted back all week. In that moment, the balance of power shifted. She was no longer nervous Nancy. She was the girl who flipped the loudest bully in school over her shoulder. And nothing would ever be the same again. The cafeteria buzzed with the kind of energy that only comes after something unforgettable. Kids were still replaying the flip in their minds, whispering to each other, their voices a mix of shock, awe, and nervous laughter. Some had their phones out, trying to retell the story in texts that were already flying across the school. Meanwhile, the bully sat on the floor, rubbing his elbow, his swagger shattered. His face burned as red as the ketchup stains on the floor. He looked around for backup, for someone to laugh with him, but his friends were frozen. For once, they weren't laughing. They were staring at her. She stood calm, her breathing steady, her hands relaxed at her sides. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't throw a single word back at him. That silence, that discipline, made the moment even more powerful. She wasn't trying to embarrass him. She was showing that she wouldn't be anyone's punching bag anymore. Finally, the bully staggered to his feet. His eyes darted around the cafeteria, searching for something, control, dignity, maybe even a way to turn it all back into a joke. But the crowd wasn't with him anymore. No one was laughing. Some kids even smirked at him. The king had fallen, and everyone knew it. "You got lucky," he muttered, his voice shaky, trying to salvage his pride. This isn't over. But it sounded hollow, and he knew it. He shoved past a few kids and stormed out of the cafeteria, tray abandoned. The room erupted again. Did you see her face? She wasn't even scared. She flipped him like it was nothing. Yo, she's been holding back this whole time. She sat back down quietly, her tray untouched. Her heart was still pounding, but not from fear, from release. For the first time since arriving at this school, she felt in control. Not invisible, not mocked, not cornered, in control. For the rest of the day, whispers followed her in the hallways, but they weren't the cruel whispers of before. They were filled with curiosity, admiration, even respect. Kids who'd once laughed at her now looked twice before saying anything. Some even nodded as she passed. By the end of the week, the nickname Nervous Nancy had vanished. In its place came new ones: Samurai Girl, The Flip, The Quiet Storm. She didn't love the labels, but she understood something important. People finally saw her for more than her silence. The bullies didn't vanish overnight. Middle schools don't change that quickly. But they gave her space now. And the loudest one? He avoided her eyes, his swagger not quite as big, his voice not quite as loud. She hadn't planned on becoming the story of the week. She hadn't wanted attention at all. But by standing up, by refusing to shrink one more time, she had rewritten her story in front of everyone. And though she still carried her anxieties, still wrestled with nerves in quiet moments, she'd proven to herself and to the school something that could never be taken away. She was stronger than anyone had ever imagined.